Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are unpacking a fascinating and, honestly, kind of urgent modern mystery. We're talking about the multi-layered mental health crisis driven by smartphones. We're going to peel back the layers of this whole phenomenon to figure out exactly what is happening to the youth experience right now. We'll be digging into the physical changes, the deep psychological shifts, and even the massive global cultural impact, all driven by those little glowing rectangles we carry in our pockets. Let's kick things off with a number that literally stopped me in my tracks: 45%. The research shows that between 2003 and 2022, face-to-face socializing among teenagers plummeted by more than 45%. I mean, we aren't just talking about a minor shift in weekend plans here. This is a massive generational transformation in how human beings interact. And honestly, it sets the stage for everything else we're going to uncover today. Which brings us to the first major shift: the physical hangout collapse. To really wrap our heads around that 45% drop, the data shows that teen hangouts have declined by more than 3 hours per week. That's 3 entire hours of unstructured, in-person hangout time just gone, vanished. Those are the crucial hours where kids previously learned social cues, figured out how to resolve conflicts, and built real emotional bonds. Instead, those fundamental developmental routines are being swapped out for solitary screen time, as smartphones essentially colonize the entire youth social experience. Impartially looking at how this breaks down across different demographics, a really stark correlation emerges. The data highlights that the specific groups experiencing the absolute largest increase in smartphone use have simultaneously seen the most dramatic declines in real-world time spent with friends. The source points out liberal teenage girls as a prime demographic example of this trend, showing a steep spike in digital device usage that directly mirrors a sharp drop in physical friend time. It's almost a one-to-one trade-off. So, what exactly are they doing with all that screen time? That leads us right into the toxic digital prestige economies. The researchers use this incredibly vivid metaphor. They describe social media as attention alcohol. Think about that for a second. In small doses, sure, it's a fun distraction. But unlike a glass of wine at dinner, teens are carrying this open bar around in their pockets 24/7. They aren't just communicating, they're chugging this attention alcohol in a massive, unregulated way that heavily disrupts healthy emotional development. And we aren't just speculating from the outside. Internal Instagram data backs this up perfectly. Their own findings showed that 32% of teenage girls who already struggled with their body image said the app actively made them feel worse. So nearly a third of vulnerable users are being pushed even further into negative self-perception by the core design of the platform itself. It's a pretty stark look at how this attention alcohol impacts the people who are already hurting. So why does it make them feel so bad? Well, it's because these platforms engineer what the researchers call a suffocating prestige economy. In the real world, teens are used to being graded on their homework or tests. But online, quantified rewards like likes and views stand in for grades. And those grades purely reward appearance and presentation. It traps kids in a state of constant status anxiety. What should be their downtime to just relax is converted into this exhausting 24/7 virtual competition for validation. Now let's look a bit deeper into the internal psychology with the prevalence inflation trap. The source identifies this fascinating and somewhat counterintuitive psychological phenomenon called prevalence inflation. Because mental health is talked about constantly online, teenagers are repeatedly told that mental health crises are everywhere. Because of this, they begin mistakenly interpreting perfectly normal human emotions, like standard stress over a math test or being sad over a breakup, as severe signs of a clinical disorder. They're essentially diagnosing themselves with illnesses they don't actually have, just because internet culture has hypersensitized them to the terminology. And this triggers a really tragic self-fulfilling spiral. Step 1 is hypervigilance. A teenager becomes obsessively focused on their own perceived symptoms. That hyperfocus leads straight to step 2, social withdrawal, because they start feeling way too fragile to engage with the real world. And that isolation, well, ironically, it leads to step 3, the actual clinical anxiety and depression they were afraid of in the first place. The online obsession with mental illness actually generates the illness. Making the spiral even worse is an ideology the researchers have dubbed reverse-CBT. And this is where the internet gets truly toxic. Instead of helping young people process their feelings in a healthy way, the digital environment actively trains them to do the exact opposite. Think about it. Traditional cognitive behavioral therapy intentionally teaches you to avoid catastrophic thinking and build mental resilience. But social media, its algorithms literally thrive on outrage, indignation, and catastrophizing. The internet trains young people to interpret normal, passing thoughts in the absolute most distressing, apocalyptic ways possible. It is literally therapy in reverse. Zooming all the way out to the macro level, we hit a truly surprising discovery: exporting the American psyche. Here's the kicker. Even though smartphones and internet access are ubiquitous everywhere in the developed world, this steep rise in teenage mental distress is actually not a global phenomenon. Think about that. If the phone hardware itself was the only problem, you'd see the exact same spike uniformly all over the planet, but we don't. When you map the data out, this unique brand of despair is heavily concentrated within the English-speaking world. The researchers actually refer to it as Anglosphere despair, noting that it impacts the United States, the UK, Canada, and Australia most severely. This tells us that language and culture are playing an absolutely massive role in how the technology rewires the brain. What the research suggests we're witnessing is essentially the globalization of a highly neurotic, individualistic American psyche. Vulnerable young people all over the world are consuming English-language media, watching specific influencers, and reading American news. And by doing so, they are internalizing and acting out the specific psychological pathologies they see modeled for them online. It's basically an ideological export disguised as a technological one. Finally, let's bring it back down to earth and look at the real-world cognitive costs and potential solutions. Inside the classroom, the impact is undeniable. The data proves that literally just having a smartphone in a student's field of vision is a measurable drain on their cognitive focus. Add to that, students spending more than 5 hours a day on these devices consistently suffer from significantly lower math scores. Bottom line, this deep device dependence correlates entirely negatively with overall life satisfaction. The more they're plugged in, the worse they do in school, and the less happy they are. Given this massive documented drain on student attention, the collapse of face-to-face socializing, and the creation of severe mental distress, researchers are now advocating for some pretty drastic systemic measures. It leaves us with one incredibly provocative question to ponder today. Should phones just be completely banned in schools? Imagine what might happen if we gave an entire generation those 3 hours a week back. The answer to that question might just change the future.